So today's scripture comes from Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 11, and it says, O Lord, please hear my prayer. Listen to the prayers of those of us who delight in honoring you. Please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me. In those days, I was the king's cupbearer. Why is this so important? Because it says, I was the king's cupbearer. So I want you to know that no matter how small your position may seem, that the God will give you something mighty and a task that oftentimes it seems like you cannot fulfill, but to know what to ask for, to know what to pray for is so amazing, because in this prayer, he did not ask for money. He did not ask for materials to rebuild a thing. He asks for favor from the king. So that also goes to show that there is truly power in proximity, right? And so he did not know what it looked like. And I just want to give you the backstory of this passage. So Nehemiah was serving as the king's cupbearer. And so he overheard them sharing how the wall of God's chosen ones was tore down, and he began to fast, and he was grieved, and he was deeply saddened. And so in this moment, he just asked for the king to have favor over his life in whatever task that God has already instructed him to do. So as we go forward to chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, it says that I had never appeared sad in his presence. So the king asked me, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. He then goes on to say, I was terrified. He was so terrified, right? Because he asked for favor from the king, but he did not know which approach he was going to take. He did not know what it was going to look like, what to ask for. And so he usually is upbeat, full of the Spirit, which is why it's so important for us to always do our job with excellence, right? Oftentimes, people are not going to ask if something is wrong with you if you walk around with the woe is me, self-pity spirit of it's always something wrong. You know, when something is always wrong with someone, people tend not to ask what's wrong because it's just always something. So just remember that whatever position you hold, do it with excellence, do it with a good spirit, so that if you are troubled, so that if something's bothering you and someone asks what's wrong, they know it's something serious. And so I'm going to go on and read. He goes on to say, long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. The king asks, verse 4, well, how can I help you? This is the favor. Well, how can I help you? How can I assist you? And so, once again, you have to know in prayer, what do you need? God always say, ask for what you want. It's important for you to spend time so that when you do finally get the prayer that you ask for, when you're in those situations, you know what to ask for. And so this is the favor that Nehemiah had just prayed for from the king. And it goes down and says in verse 8, it says, and the king granted these requests because of the gracious hand of God was on me. But guess what he also did? It says in verse 9, the king, I should add, had sent along army officers and horsemen to protect me. So not only did the Lord give him favor with the king to honor and grant his request, right? But he also gave him protection. And I am just here to tell you that whatever vision God has given you, whatever dream he's given you, that you may not know how it's going to come to pass. But instead of asking for the money, instead of asking for these things that you believe that you need, maybe we should change our prayer and say, Lord, grant me favor. Grant me in proximity with who I need to be in proximity with. Grant me these things, because I am here to tell you, not only will God give you provision for the vision, right? But he will also give you protection, because he know that when you're doing this God thing, that you will be faced with many battles. So because Nehemiah was on to do a God thing, because he already received provision and protection, there was 3 things that the enemy tried to do to distract them. And I'm going to give you those 3. The first one was to cause confusion. It was to cause confusion. Whenever you are doing a God thing, it seems as if you begin to be confused. Where do I start? What do I do? Where do I go? How do I put this thing in motion? So he started with confusion. The second thing was distraction, right? Once you're on the right path and once you kind of get your dominoes in the right place, you begin to get distracted with the outside world, with other people pulling you in directions. And the third thing was discouragement, right? And so the Lord will give you discouragement, also intimidation. And we all know that the enemy comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. And so he did all three things with Nehemiah. So I'm going to go through chapter 4, verses 8, where you'll see where the enemy began to attack. So chapter 4, verses 8, it says, they all made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion. So there was the Ashdodites that heard about the work that was going forward to rebuild this wall. In verse 8, it says they all made plans, right? All the enemies came together because they knew that this was a God thing. They knew that this was a powerful thing. And they all came to fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion. But how did he get past that? It goes on in verse 9 and says, but we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. So how do we push past confusion? We must pray and guard ourselves and put on the full body, the armor of Christ. And so after they could not confuse them, then came the distraction, which is in chapter 6, let's start at verses 2. And it says, so Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Onan. But I realized they were plotting to harm me. So I replied by sending them a message. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet you? And so this is what we must do. Once we start getting the momentum and getting the ball rolling, when people ask you, come on out, let's have a good time, let's do this, and you feel like you're being pulled in many directions, that indeed may be a distraction. And so once you make it past the planning stage and you're now in the working stage, there will be many distractions. And so you must remain, right? It says remain aware, right? Don't be asleep in a slumber and think everything is just a coincidence or it's nothing. Know that when you're doing God's work, the enemy will attack you in many ways. And so after that did not work, verse 8, it says, there is no truth in any part of your story. You are making up the whole thing. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with greater determination. Greater determination. Once he realized that they were trying to discourage him and they were plotting to kill him and send all these attacks, what did Nehemiah do? He reached in, he dug deep, and he said, now I am going to work with greater determination. And so I just want to encourage you that if you have been through all the emotions, if the enemy keeps doing one attack after another and you're getting discouraged and you're getting intimidated and you're feeling the pressure, I just want to encourage you that now is the time for you to dig deep and do that work with greater determination. And so I am just so thankful for this scripture because it really shows us of how the enemy attacks us three ways and how the Lord will definitely, whatever he gives you in a dream and a vision was prophesied. When it is Lord's will, he will give you provision for his vision. And that is the good news.